Since she is Emily's child, shouldn't you raise her? After a car accident took the lives of Emily and her husband, the discussion about what to do with their only daughter, Amy, ensued. However, at this moment, Tina said,
"A baby with developmental disabilities is a mess. You take care of her."
"Really, I'd be happy to." I found myself responding spontaneously. 20 years later, we were dining out on her birthday when a phone call came.
"Hey, that girl was on TV, wasn't she?"
"Who are you talking about?" From the other side came a scornful shout. "Don't play dumb."
"It's about Amy, Carol. Why didn't you tell us anything? She got a scholarship from an automaker to study abroad at a prestigious university in Germany, recommended by a professor from the Institute of Technology, you know."
"Oh, I see." I then remembered that I hadn't mentioned anything to my family back home. How would Tina, who has always ignored us, the developmentally disabled child, and the stepdaughter who is raising her, feel when she finds out about this child? I was inwardly smirking. "My name is Carol Miller. I'm 45 years old. I live with my husband David and our daughter Amy. Amy is 21 this year. Amy, a university student, has decided to study abroad in Germany from September and seems to be enjoying her preparation every day. Our life is going well now, but it wasn't always so. The life I had before marriage was not always pleasant. All because of that person my dad remarried. About 40 years ago, my dad divorced my biological mom. And around that time, he was seeing Tina, who he eventually remarried. I was 5 years old at the time. Tina came with her daughter from a previous marriage, my stepsister Emily. Emily and I got along well immediately, but things with Tina weren't as smooth. Tina constantly compared me to Emily, scolded me, stopped giving me allowance, and never updated my wardrobe, clearly favoring her. However, I was somewhat oblivious, which didn't bother me too much. Yet, my nonchalant attitude seemed to infuriate Tina even more, causing a negative loop at home. Emily was intelligent and quickly noticed the tension between Tina and me. She felt sorry for me, buying things only for herself, and apologizing with a sorry look. This got worse after my 10-year younger brother, Tony, was born. Tina focused only on Emily and Tony, virtually ignoring me. Well, being ignored was probably for the best. While it was bothersome, it wasn't as hard on me as Emily felt it was. In reality, I wasn't as academically or athletically gifted as Emily and Tony. Besides, I wasn't very good at exercise or health. I was convinced that I was different from them. I got a job after graduating from high school, while the two went on to go to a top university. When I was 23 years old, I married a young man, David Miller, who worked for a client of my company where I worked. Meanwhile, Emily also got married and had a daughter the following year. But here, our fate took a sudden and tumultuous turn. When Emily's daughter, Amy, was just 18 months old, Emily and her husband died in a car accident. Emily was only 27 years old at the time. After their funeral, the question arose of what to do with Amy, but here the discussion became complicated because Tina refused to take the child in. Normally, a child would be taken in by either the grandparents or the in-laws, but Emily's husband's family consisted only of the father. He could manage his own life just fine, but taking care of a baby was out of the question for him. He admitted the baby was cute, but it was too much for him. At this point, the natural choice fell to my parents, who were both still around, but Tina was against taking the girl in. "Why can't you take in Amy?" I unusually confronted Tina. Then Tina snorted and spat out.
"That child is Emily's, but unfortunately she's not well made."
Wondering what she meant, I continued to question her.
"I heard from Emily before. She said Amy was a bit strange, so she had a specialist look at her, and it seems there is a bit of a problem."
I remember David's knee shaking next to me when he heard this. "So you're saying you can't raise her?"
"It's not that I can't raise her, I just don't want to."
I was appalled. Surely that's not something you say about your granddaughter.
"Like you, it's not worth raising a bad kid."
I was unusually furious at Tina's words this time. I was unable to have children after all. After failing to conceive despite being married, I investigated and found that there was an issue with the development of my reproductive organs, making it difficult to have children. In hindsight, there had been signs, like irregular periods. I blamed myself for not noticing, but having accepted it, there was nothing I could do. However, if there was a child, I also felt a desire to try raising one myself. That's why I confronted Tina, who I normally wouldn't argue with. "Since she is Emily's child, shouldn't you raise her?" But at that time, Tina said this way.
"I don't want a child with developmental issues."
Developmental issues. That word stung me deeply. I later realized that I too had some developmental issues, as I was slow to react and often made little mistakes at work. "Are you saying you don't want to take her in because she's poorly made or has developmental issues?"
"Yes, that's right. Emily and Tony were always very capable kids. They were worth raising."
"So you had that attitude towards me?" "Yes." Tina raised her eyebrows as if it were obvious.
"If you had even a slight chance of a future, I would have raised you like Emily and Tony, but you, from the first time I met you, you couldn't even respond properly, and kept your nose running."
It seemed she had written me off from that moment. Then my dad, who was listening, tried to calm things down.
"Hey, that's not something you should say."
But I knew well that wasn't what he truly felt. He had left me to Tina and generally ignored me. That is because I looked too much like my mom, whom he had divorced. I had resigned myself to not expecting anything from my dad by the time I was in middle school. My real family, while I was at my parents' house, was just Emily and Tony. After getting married, my husband, David, was added, but those three were the only ones on my side. Emily was always kind to me. Influenced by her, Tony also called me sister and was affectionate towards me. So when this conversation came up,
"What are you talking about, Mom?
Only Tony got mad. Pushed by his voice, I was further saying to Tina, "So what are you going to do with Amy?" Then Tina, after thinking a bit, threw these words at me with a sneering expression.
"You incompetent, raise a developmentally disabled baby."
Really, I'd be happy to. I had responded without thinking. I was glad to have drawn those words from Tina. She must not have imagined such a reaction from me. I remember her having a very odd expression. After this discussion, Tony said to me,
"That felt good, but are you really okay, sis?"
He was still 15 at the time. He was exactly 10 years younger than me. "I'm fine. I've always wanted kids. And you know, my husband is very understanding. I mean, I'm a bit slow, right? If there's something I don't get, he's the kind of person who'll explain everything."
I see.
And, you know, I could barely breathe back at my parents' house if it weren't for you and Emily. So I want to do for Amy what Emily did for me, as much as I can. Then Tony nodded deeply.
If that's what you think, sis, then it's okay. But it might still be tough, you know. So if there's anything I can do, just tell me.
That's what he told me. I was happy about how my brother felt, and I just patted Tony on the shoulder lightly. Emily's daughter Amy had shown signs of developmental disabilities from the beginning. As an infant, she disliked physical contact and was sensitive to noise. When she got a bit older, if she started something, she would keep at it indefinitely. So David decided to take Amy for an early assessment. Moreover, he suggested this.
Let's also check our own tendencies while we're at it.
David has had a personal interest in this field for a long time.
Some of my friends have pretty bumpy traits. You know, they kind of stood out in class. But they were interesting guys.
When David and I took the tests, I also understood what meant by my slowness. In an intelligence test that reveals 4 characteristics, my ability to think and observe, verbal comprehension, and perceptual reasoning were average, but my working memory and the ability to quickly process tasks, processing speed, were somewhat below average.
That means you should avoid multitasking, and you'll be fine if you go at your own steady pace.
He was generally balanced and above average, but as expected, Amy's test scores were highly variable. Her verbal comprehension and perceptual reasoning were exceptionally good, but her working memory and processing speed were barely average. This disparity meant that even if her overall IQ was good, living could be difficult. So I decided to really commit to raising her and quit my job. I had just been continuing without a reason to quit, so that transition went smoothly. Becoming a full-time homemaker, I was able to understand my traits from the test results, and under the doctor's guidance, I improved the efficiency of household chores. And when childcare necessarily involved multitasking, I didn't hesitate to seek external help. As Amy grew up, she often misunderstood questions and ended up not being well liked by school teachers, neighborhood adults, and friends. But whenever a problem arose, we dealt with it immediately. David and I were just trying our best with Amy. Interestingly, she knew from a fairly early age that I was not her real mother. and she accepted it in a matter-of-fact way. It's a bit strange, but it seems that's just how she feels. Then, she smoothly entered middle school and high school, and even managed to get into a target engineering college. And last year, although she was only a sophomore, she suddenly said that she had met a professor from her department who had suggested she go to a university in Germany. Really? Is that true?
Yeah, is that okay?
Amy asked in the same tone as when asking if it's okay to go on a trip or head into town for shopping.
Oh, right? If it's about the cost, there's a scholarship that you don't have to pay back they are setting up for me.
Really? I was surprised. It was less about the fact that it would save on tuition, and more about what it meant that Amy was being offered so much. Honestly, I don't really understand what Amy is studying at school. I'm not very bright myself, and I was never interested in academics. Especially Amy's major in engineering. I mean, anything related to science was all Greek to me even in middle school. David was more of a humanities person, so while not as clueless as me, now all he can do is marvel at Amy's studies. So while I can't offer much in terms of interest or advice, I can certainly support Amy's growing interests. If Amy wants to do something, David and I were all for helping her pursue it. David, of course, was thrilled to hear this talk. The study abroad was set for after the summer vacation of her third year, and we continued our lives steadily preparing for it. And the new year came, and it was her birthday. While we were out eating, marveling at how beautifully our daughter had grown up, a call suddenly came in. I thought, what could it be? And looked at my smartphone. It was from back home. And when I looked closer, because I had kept throwing her down, I hadn't noticed. Was it 20 times? No, it was more than 30 times. It was like a bombardment of calls. What could it be, all of a sudden? I looked at the two of them. Both shrugged their shoulders. In these 20 years since we started raising Amy, calls from home were rare.
Maybe you should answer it.
Agreeing, I pressed a call button. Hello, this is Carol.
Oh, Carol, what have you been up to? I called so many times and you never answer. As slow as ever.
She's as loud as ever. Her voice was even leaking out to where the other two could hear. Sorry, I'm out right now.
Oh, you and your excuses, always the same.
So, what happened? I can't be bothered with Tina's usual tone.
The TV, did you see the TV? What is that all about?
The TV.
Just now, the evening wide show. They had a segment on promising young people.
The Promising Young People segment. Really? That reminded me of the local station's evening wide show. Sorry, I've been out and haven't seen it. What happened?
What do you mean what? Your girl was on TV, wasn't she?
Who are you talking about? From the other end of the phone, a voice shouted, "Don't play dumb with me." Meanwhile, Amy took out her smartphone and started doing something.
It's about Amy, Carol. Why didn't you tell us anything? Recommended by a professor from the engineering college. She's going to study in Germany on a scholarship from a car manufacturer.
Oh, I see. I remembered that I hadn't told anything to my family back home.
Really, Carol? Why don't you tell us such important things?
From the other side of the smartphone screen, a surprisingly loud voice echoed.
Hey Mom, is this what she's talking about?
Amy showed me a muted video. It seemed to be from our local station's video channel.
All right, next up, we'll drop by this lab.
The anchor walks into a laboratory. And there were the professor, the assistant, and Amy, who had dressed up for today. What? This was today?
Yes.
Apparently, the content was about the promising young people that the broadcasting station thought highly of among the young generation.
Why didn't you tell us about the study abroad thing?
I let out a sigh. Tina, I thought you wouldn't be interested.
I could have boasted to my neighbors that she would be on TV.
What is she talking about? Amy looked at me, puzzled. I see. This isn't a big deal for Amy, I realized.
Come to think of it, being on TV is a big deal for your generation, Tina.
David also muttered quietly. Amy's eyes widened in astonishment. Indeed, it's true. When I was a child, it was a big fuss when the local TV station's cameras came to town. And when it aired, my siblings and I would crowd around the screen. Nowadays, anyone can broadcast videos, so young people aren't as impressed by local TV interviews. And I don't feel it's as special anymore, but for Tina's generation, appearing on terrestrial TV was really a big deal. It's something to brag about to the neighbors. By the way, Tina is very much a show-off. But that doesn't mean I have an obligation to report every detail to her. Tina, you haven't cared about Amy before, have you? You didn't even ask which school she was going to. So why should I specifically tell you now?
Well, but still.
I could tell Tina's voice was getting flustered.
You would have thought she'd go to such a prestigious engineering college. It's the top science school in the state. Even Tony couldn't get in there.
That's true. Amy attends the top engineering college in the state. It's quite prominent even on a national level. And our state, being a hub for the automotive industry, was involved in this study abroad opportunity. Somehow a plan Amy made on her own and proposed to her professor made its way into the hands of engineers at a major car manufacturer, leading to a scholarship. In fact, David was quite astonished when he heard the whole story.
I never imagined a child with developmental disabilities could go there. Or is she normal?
It is certain that she has a developmental disability. In fact, I was able to ask for a helper to help raise Amy, who had a very particular personality, when she was beyond my capacity for parallel work.
But how could a child with such a developmental disability go to such a top-level college?
We just expanded her strengths and supported her weaknesses.
What kind of strengths are you talking about?
I shrugged. Even if I mentioned her understanding of language, Tina wouldn't be easily convinced. I explained it to her like this. To be honest, I really don't know the details of what Amy is studying.
You don't know?
Tina raised her voice even more. You know I'm not the brightest, Tina, don't you?
Well, that's true, but
As usual, she's brutally honest. She's always been like that with me. Calling me dumb or slow, she never minces her words.
is that okay for a mother?
It's fine. She's working hard and doing what she wants. I'm not really doing anything special, am I?
It's true, but
I mercilessly hung up the phone.
She's the same as ever, huh?
Amy said in disgust and looked at my disconnected phone. Then, about half a year later, the day came for Amy to go to Germany with her professors. I went to International Airport with David to see her off. Amy, are you really okay?
Yeah, maybe.
Amy answered in her usual laid-back manner.
It might not be okay, but we'll deal with that when it comes.
The professor who had approved her smiled as he said this, and the assistant, who was also accompanying them, just chuckled upon hearing it. We spent the long wait at the airport talking in a cafe. But then that moment came.
Amy, there you are.
I was startled by the voice. Is that you, Tina?
What?
As soon as they recognized us, Tina, my dad, and several women of Tina's friends hurried over.
Who are they, Mom?
Your grandparents, and I'm not sure about the others.
Could they be the neighbors you mentioned?
We whispered our guesses on the spot. However, what surprised me was how dressed up Tina and my dad were. Hey, Dad, Tina, what's going on? I stepped in front of Amy.
Hi, Carol. Don't be so cold.
That was my dad. I was puzzled.
Look, your mom told me. You didn't get in touch at all, right? And I watched that local program. I recorded it. Why don't you come home to talk about these things?
She's always been inconsiderate, and these are my neighbors. They came all the way here wanting to meet my genius granddaughter.
Genius. I was dumbfounded by her words. Until recently, they hardly bothered with Amy, assuming a child with developmental disabilities wouldn't amount to much. Honestly, since her birthday, I had been bombarded with annoying calls. I had to ask my brother Tony to intervene and ask them to hold back on the calls. Tony had moved out after getting married, but he still had influence over our parents. After all, he was their only son. But it seems he also found our parents' home uncomfortable. He once told me,
I liked both my sisters, and I hated how Mom blatantly favored us differently. Also, when she pushed Amy onto you, that was it. I was done with Mom.
Tony, then 15, had lost faith in his parents, as had I. I had to rely on him to such an extent because of Tina's relentless calling.
They all want to know how you raised her to turn out this way.
You never asked me before, did you? I answered indifferently.
Come on, isn't that a bit unfair?
My dad reproached me like that. Unfair. Tina is the one who hasn't contacted us for the last 20 years. I answered nonchalantly. Then my dad turned to Tina, looking surprised.
That's not true.
Tina, forcing a smile, quietly headed towards the professor sitting there.
Thank you for your help. I am Amy's grandmother. My granddaughter has been under your care a lot.
She began her greetings as she left. The professor and his assistant were muttering something. Then the professor, with widened eyes, turned to Tina.
Excuse me, are you the person who, because of her granddaughter's developmental disabilities, pushed the responsibility onto Carol?
The professor asked cheerfully and straightforwardly.
What?
Tina froze.
Professor, this woman is not used to that kind of talk.
Amy spoke bluntly.
Oh, my mistake. You mentioned that.
Yes, indeed, I did say that. Facts are facts.
Right, facts are important.
The assistant chuckled at me as if to say, "What should we do?" I silently gestured to leave it as is. These two are cut from the same cloth. It seems that among university professors, sometimes you find this type of personality. They are very smart when it comes to their own research, but there is often something very off elsewhere. Having dined with the professor at our home several times due to Amy's matters, honestly, it felt like there was another Amy there. When the professor and Amy started talking, my husband and I couldn't keep up at all. Not only because the topics were specialized, but also because the conversation was incredibly abbreviated. And the leaps in their dialogue were staggering. Eventually, they'd get so absorbed in their conversation that they'd startle upon realizing the table had been cleared without them noticing. In addition, he was active and talked about Amy to an acquaintance who worked at a manufacturer's institute. Since her freshman year, she had been sneaking into seminars, becoming deeply involved in discussions. Apparently, she was a rare student who also pitched such plans in great detail, which they termed casual conversation, that reached even higher ups at the research institute, and they came forward with a scholarship, seeing her as a future talent they wanted.
It's an unprecedented turn of events, isn't it?
The assistant, apparently there to support such an unconventional professor, chuckled. From an outsider's perspective, he must seem very difficult. Honestly, if this professor lived nearby, I'd find it troubling. After all, he's the kind of person who can blurt out something about Tina so loudly.
No, that's not true. I asked her to take in my granddaughter because Carol couldn't have children.
Tina desperately denied it with a troubled look.
Well, I actually have a pretty good memory. When Amy first snuck into my seminar, that story had already been told, and Amy herself has a good memory too.
Yeah, I do have a good memory, right, Grandma? You left me when I was about 1.5.
You remembered that time.
Tina stared at Amy, shocked.
Well, I don't actually remember, but I remember everything about my photos at home. There's nothing from before I was 1.5. That means before that, you couldn't bring anything home, right? Because of my biological mom's photos, right? I just figured it out from the timeline.
Tina looked dumbfounded. Still not enough words. So, Tina, when I took Amy in, you didn't let me take even a single photo of her biological mom, Emily, did you?
Did that really happen?
She's talking about that. Because you kept all of Emily's photos to yourself, Tina. We don't have a single photo of Amy from her first 1.5 years, whether she was in them or not. At this, the neighbors behind us started murmuring.
Yes, That was when I was about 7, I think. I heard it from my uncle.
Amy, realizing she had been vague, suddenly started speaking rapidly.
When I called my uncle, he said there were photos, but Grandma wouldn't give them to him. When I asked why, my uncle told me. Grandma really loved my mom who passed away, so she wanted to keep those photos. That's why any photos with me in them were off limits. So, I don't have a single photo of my real mom.
The murmuring behind us grew louder.
Not a single photo of her real mother.
It's a little too awful.
I remember, Carol was often left behind when everyone else went on trips.
The neighbors seemed to have good memories too. I see, so Tony said that. He did a good job. I couldn't help but laugh a bit.
What did you say?
Tina overheard and glared at me sharply. Don't you understand why Tony moved out of the house, even though his workplace isn't that far away?
What are you talking about?
Tony was embarrassed that his mother was the kind of person who would kick out me or your developmentally disabled grandchild. I spoke slowly and clearly, making sure everyone behind could hear. And Amy added to my words, her tone bouncing.
Well, I'm not sure why you came here, Grandma, but I don't need any contact from you in the future. I don't care about you and don't want any relationship going forward, and I won't even attend your funeral.
She said it nonchalantly. I burst out laughing loudly. Hey, that's a bit too much to say. I added, though it was after the fact.
Sorry, just telling the truth.
The look on Tina's and my dad's faces was priceless. Then my dad and Tina learned that this was going to have a terrible impact on them. Someone had recorded our conversation at the airport, and it had spread on social media. Never underestimate an evening local news show. People of all ages look forward to local programs, regardless of their broadcast value, enjoying programs that pick up on local information, given that local programs are dearly loved. It's not surprising that someone would record Amy, whose face is well known locally, especially since her peers might recognize her from the local scene. Even if it was a strange dispute at the airport, people might want to record it. The recording, including audio, saying abandoned because of her developmental disabilities, resonated widely in today's climate, quickly going viral. When David and I were relaxing at home, he suddenly checked social media and exclaimed, "Wow." Seeing the word developmental disability trending, he discovered it was our video. The sheer number of reactions and comments made David and me look at each other and burst into laughter. Then from the next day, the onslaught of calls from home began anew. It was such a hassle that I just set it to voicemail. Among those messages, Tina was shrilly pleading,
Please get that video taken down.
as if that were possible. According to Tony, Tina has been unable to leave her house lately. The neighbors who were there tied what they saw to the viral video with their younger family members.
That lady pushed her developmentally disabled granddaughter onto her stepdaughter.
Young people spread it further by word of mouth. The perception of developmental disabilities has changed significantly over the past 20 years. Tina's behavior would never be acceptable in today's world. As a result, whatever momentum she had has disappeared. and she now stays cloistered at home. My dad often calls me, seemingly distressed by having to listen to Tina's complaints. As for me, I keep the answering machine on because, frankly, it's not my concern. After all, my dad never did anything when Tina was bullying me. He can take care of Tina by himself, as far as he's concerned.
Hello, Mom. I've settled into my room. I went to see the school.
Since her arrival, Amy has been calling me daily.
Such a huge campus. I think my German is somehow understood by everyone.
She keeps chatting about various things. Well, honestly, the German lessons were rushed before her study abroad, but it seems they're paying off now. She's always had a good memory, and she has analytical skills and courage. In addition to German, other European languages are also being spoken. It appears that being abroad might be a comfortable place for Amy.
Hey, Mom, I really will call you every night.
That's what Amy tells me. Yeah, well, only if you have time. I respond.
Don't say that. I'll be lonely.
You'll get busy with your research soon, won't you?
Yeah, I probably think so.
I agreed.
But still, I'll miss you, Mom. Don't forget that.
Of course. With that, I end a call across the ocean. And I deeply reflect. I'm glad I took her in. David and I will be alone for a while, but when she comes back one day, I will cook many of Amy's favorite dishes. As I am her mom,